Hello, I understand we've got 30 or so people in the presentation, so we'll just start now. Welcome to our virtual consultation event for the proposed development at Helensburgh Golf Club. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for attending today. This event is an important part of the pre-application process, where we will present our indicative development proposals for the Helensburgh Golf Club and take any comments you may have. We want to make sure that this development meets local needs and is the best that it can possibly be. Your views are therefore very important, and we welcome feedback which we can incorporate into our finalised plans. Obviously, this is a virtual event which will take the form of a webinar type presentation. In normal times, we would hold an exhibition in a community hall and allow you to view our proposals and speak to members of the project team directly. However, as a result of the lockdown restrictions which are currently in place, it's not possible to do this, and we're therefore carrying out our consultation online in accordance with government guidance. I am, however, very pleased to say that we still have an expert team to present our plans to you and to answer any questions that you may have. By way of introductions, my name is Roddy McLeod. I'm a planning consultant, and I've been appointed by Helensburgh Golf Club and Taylor Wimpey to carry out this consultation and to ultimately obtain planning permission for the proposed development. I'm joined in this event by John Laverty of Helensburgh Golf Club, Jonathan Tucker, he's the course architect with Estuary, David Urquhart, who's the clubhouse architect with Wellwood Leslie Architects. We have Graeme Oswald of Taylor Wimpey, and we're also joined by Ewan MacDonald, who's representing Dunbritton Housing Association. Before we start our formal presentation, I'd like to cover off some initial housekeeping matters, if that's okay. Firstly, you can hear and see us, but we cannot hear or see you. This function has been restricted to protect your confidentiality. We are also recording this event, and it will be made available on our website for local residents who can't attend today to view. Secondly, if you have any questions or comments about the proposals, then please enter these in the chat function on the Zoom screen, and we will respond to these at the end of our presentation. These questions will be anonymous. During the presentation, we will ask a few basic yes/no questions to understand if there is general support for the various component parts of the proposals, and these will appear as polls. We would appreciate your responses to these when they appear, and all you have to do is click and submit your answers. We have more details on the proposals on our websites, where you can complete a feedback form. These are shown on screen now at the bottom down here. At montague-evans.co.uk/HGC development and at taylorwimpey.co.uk/Helensburgh-golf-club. Finally, this is the first of two planned consultation events. The second will be held later this year, likely in April, at which point we will have considered the comments provided today, undertaken additional survey work, and produced more detailed plans. We plan to lodge a planning application for the proposals early summer, at which point you will also have the opportunity to comment directly on the proposals to Argyll and Bute Council planners. So introductions out the way. I trust most of you are already familiar with the development site, but for the avoidance of doubt, the site location plan shown on the screen just now shows the area in question. The site is currently occupied by Helensburgh Golf Club, and is situated to the north of Mercury Drive and Kent Drive and accessed off East Abercrombie Street in here. The dotted orange line indicates the area where Taylor Wimpey will develop the housing element, with the land to the north of the golf club occupying the new golf holes. We know that development of this site will not necessarily be very straightforward, but both Helensburgh Golf Club and Taylor Wimpey are excited about the fantastic opportunities which it presents to deliver first-class golfing facilities at the heart of the local community and much needed affordable and family homes to meet local needs. As shown in this slide, we have undertaken a detailed analysis of the site context and identified several key site constraints and opportunities which it presents. I do appreciate that there's a lot of detail in this plan which might not be able to make out, and I would therefore encourage you to visit our website to view this more carefully if required. The most obvious issue relevant to the development of the site is topography. and that is indicated by the red lines or red arrows on this drawing. This creates the requirement for the development of platforms to be created, especially for the residential component. The topography does, however, create the opportunity to take advantage of the amazing views the site offers over the Clyde estuary. The site also has a number of known ecological issues, which we will carefully consider in developing our plans. Indeed, we're aware of the likelihood for environmental impact assessment to be undertaken to look in detail at the effects of the extension of the golf course on ecological issues, for example. The site also accommodates existing trees, some of which will be lost to development. A tree survey has been carried out, and we will ensure that any loss is mitigated through additional planting and the creation of new tree belts. We will also avoid development on areas with tree preservation orders which sit within the site, most notably up here within the golf course and in this area over to the west here. We're aware that there's significant areas of peat on parts of the site, with the majority of this in the golf course extension area to the north. The holes have therefore been designed to minimise any intrusion onto areas of deep peat and to ensure that there will be no drying effect. A key issue for the development of the site is to ensure that surface water runoff is retained within the site and there's no impact on existing neighbourhoods, and we're therefore carrying out detailed flood risk and drainage assessments of existing watercourses to create the most appropriate strategy to manage surface water within the development. A transportation assessment has been undertaken which assesses traffic and access issues. This finds that the proposed development can be accommodated within the capacity of junctions on the existing road network. This information will be submitted as part of the planning application for consideration by Argyll and Bute Council. Access to the development will be via East Abercrombie Street, with a potential, so that's in this location here where the existing golf clubhouse is, with a potential alternative access to the golf club to be taken from Lush Road to the north in this area here. Should note, however, that no decision has been reached on this latter point yet. A critical component of the proposed development is to ensure that Helensburgh Golf Club facilities are retained before work starts on the new houses. And this means that the new clubhouse will be built before the existing one is demolished to make way for the housing development. In addition, it's important when we consider the context to understand that the site is allocated within the Argyll and Bute Local Development Plan for housing development with an indicative capacity for 300 houses. This is shown on the proposals map extract provided on this screen, which is highlighted in orange here. So, taking into account these various site constraints and opportunities, we've developed our indicative master plan proposals. And indeed, I want to really stress that these proposals are indicative at this stage and have not yet been finalised. As shown here, our overall master plan forms two components and includes a new clubhouse and parking area for the golf course in here, a redeveloped golf course shown in green, with the 7 holes lost to the development re-provided for in this location here and here. There will be the creation of a new 6-hole par 3 course in this location here, and then the housing component will include the development of approximately 300 houses with on-site affordable housing, together with relevant access arrangements of East Abercrombie Street and access of Kent Drive here for a small component. It'll have additional landscaping and play space. An important part of this development as well are routes into and through the site, and especially how we make best use of the old Lush Road. I will now hand over to John Laverty of Helensburgh Golf Club to explain the involvement of the club in this project. John. Oh, sorry. Sorry, John, you're just on mute. I'll see if we can. Could you unmute yourself? That's great, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Roddy. Good afternoon. Helensburgh Golf Club was founded in August 1893, and it's played an important part in the social and recreational opportunities of the town as it's developed and expanded. It's produced during that time successful representatives in both the amateur and the professional game. And on the social side, Angela Bonar Law was a member of the very first committee of the club, and he became Prime Minister in 1922. The club started as a 9-hole course, guided by the famous old Tom Morris, and its original clubhouse is over at the old Lush Road end and was affectionately known as the Tin Hut. The course was extended to 18 holes in 1905, and the club purchased an additional 60 acres to the north in 1978. It has a proud history of developing, amending and improving the course over the 127 years or so that it's existed. And we find ourselves now at a time when it is prudent to once again enhance and upgrade the facilities for the future of our game and for the growing community. The club's plans for this are both extensive and progressive. We're looking for, as Roddy had mentioned, an entirely new 6-hole par 3 course close to the new clubhouse. It'll be multifunctional. It'll give easier introduction to the game of golf for new members. It'll provide a shorter course for those with time constraints, for example, or not the ability to play the 18 holes. It will also encourage the interest of a younger generation and be completely separate from the 18-hole main course. Drainage. The drainage of an existing course requires upgrading to match the modern requirements and be more able to deal with the changing weather patterns we're experiencing, especially in the last decade, the rainfall we've all experienced during that time. So we want to upgrade drainage. We also want to upgrade our practice facilities, the putting area, the chipping area, and the driving range. We wish to increase the car parking facility. Our current car parks have at times become a bit crowded. And we're looking for a new clubhouse. And we're looking at that to be a modern, efficient building with expansive views over the River Clyde into the course itself. And this is to replace our no longer fit for purpose clubhouse. In truth, it is really coming to the end of its working life. In summary, Helensburgh Golf Club's ambitions in this project are to invest, honouring our forebearers by enhancing the social and recreational facilities that are provided for the members, for the community, and for visitors alike.
Thanks, John. That's great. We have Jonathan Tucker of Estuary, and I just wonder, Jonathan, if you might explain the approach taken to the design of the reconfigured golf course, if that's possible.
Certainly, Roddy. Yes, I'm Jonathan Tucker, Senior Consultant at Estuary and also member of European Institute of Golf Course Architects. John Laverty has already emphasised the overall benefits of the scheme in terms of enhancing the existing golf course, driving range, and short game facilities, as well as providing the additional benefit of a par 3 golf course. In terms of the ethos of design, the objective is really to create a challenging but inclusive facility for all abilities. With this in mind, we are aiming to provide multiple tees at different locations so we can adjust the length of the golf course from anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 yards. So that really does match a whole range of abilities and makes it very inclusive. The schema set out on the plan allows for the provision of 2 loops of 9 holes, and that's got distinct advantages in terms of managing the golf course and playability with an even 35-35 split. Now, the topography of the site, the new site, is conducive to layout. It gently undulates generally, so we can really fit the golf course into the landscape with minimum grading works, which obviously has significant advantages. We would obviously, as John Laverty has alluded to, we would be looking to upgrade the entire golf course, just not effort focused on the new holes, but the entire golf course, with a view to improving the overall resilience and playability of the golf course year round. In terms of construction, we'd also be looking to apply the highest standards of construction and technical know-how in terms of particularly greens, tees. We'd look to create what's known as high sand root zone USJ greens, which are the sort of pinnacle of design. Obviously, the environmental aspects are incredibly important. Our core objective would be to develop a golf course with minimum intervention and maximum integration with the existing landscape. This would involve minimum grading of surfaces, avoiding significant earthworks, and where we are looking to introduce features, engineered features such as pathways and golf course furniture, we would look to use these sparingly and also use natural materials wherever practical. Now, the peatland is obviously a key issue in terms of the development of the new golf holes. We recognise this. Roddy has already mentioned that intensive peatland survey will be carried out. We're working closely with all the principal consultees, most notably Nature Scotland, Nature Scot. So we would develop a robust hydrology and geotechnical plan to minimise the impact on the peat and associated groundwater dependent terrestrial ecosystems. There is also the opportunity to promote wetland and peat as part of the overall sustainable drainage plan, which would be integrated with the housing development as well. Any material selected would be obviously compatible with the underlying peat substrate. The irrigation system would also be upgraded so that watering is targeted and applied according to the needs of the turf grass. We would also look to provide a sustainable water management plan so we can reduce any pressures on potable water resources. During construction, we would carefully monitor the works, and this would be underpinned by a construction environmental management plan. So we would minimize any intrusion or impact on sensitive habitats or ecosystems. It's important to stress that the concept master plan is that at this stage, and there will be a process of iteration based on a whole range of environmental surveys, so we can identify accurately local environmental sensitivities and avoid these, or where necessary, mitigate. In summary, the golf course will reconcile the needs for a sustainable, high-quality facility with increased opportunities and access for all golfing abilities with the highest technical and environmental standards.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Jonathan and John. Also, before we move on to discuss the actual clubhouse proposals, I think we'll run our first poll. And this is a simple question to identify whether or not you support the proposals for the redevelopment of the golf course. So if I can put this up, let's put it up now. Should be in front of you now. You should have the opportunity to click yes or no and submit your answer. We'll just give that a couple of seconds to see what people think. And again, this just allows us to get a sense of where these proposals, of how these proposals have been received. Another minute or two. Good stuff, thanks. Some good results there. So it's telling me that 61% of the people on this call are and do support these proposals, 27% undecided and 9% not supporting these. Thank you for that. if I then move on to David Urquhart of Wellwood Leslie to explain the proposals for the clubhouse. David, are you there?
Hi, Roddy. Thanks for that. As Roddy's mentioned, my name is David Urquhart. I work for Wellwood Leslie Architects. We are appointed to the golf club as the designers of the new clubhouse. I am the project architect for the proposals. So our first step in trying to identify a new clubhouse is to pick the most suitable location. This is carefully coordinated with the golf course design, and our site area is in the southwest corner of the golf club boundary, as you can see in the drawings on the screen there. The primary driver for us in deciding on this location is to have minimal effect on the existing trees and woodland that are in the area. And we have settled on this plateau, this flat area, free of trees around the area of the first green of the existing golf course. Part of what makes this particular area so attractive is that we're in sort of close proximity to some existing infrastructure with the greenkeeper shed and tracks and pathways to the west of our site. So with regard to the existing greenkeeper shed, we've got some proposed works in there that include formation of some storage facilities for both golf clubs, golf trolleys, and others. That again will be serviced by existing tracks and roads that will be potentially built upon, that run at the perimeter, at the periphery of the trees to the west of our site. Parking to support the clubhouse is proposed to be dispersed in pockets throughout and around the infrastructure here. Again, avoiding as much as possible any existing trees and trying to find these open areas to take advantage of. The building itself is proposed to be of a square sort of plan arrangement. A couple of reasons for that is there's some constructional efficiencies there, but primarily it's the efficiency of the thermal envelope. It's a very efficient sort of squeezed close shape as proposed. The building's proposed to be built over 2 stories and primarily of steel frame construction with pitched roofs. And the orientation is turned 45 degrees to the north-south axis to allow 2 of the elevations to take advantage of the spectacular views southward over the Clyde Estuary. In terms of the actual clubhouse facilities, we're looking at a sort of multi-purpose function suite, a general bar and members bar, with at the upper level, again taking advantage of the views, with additional member and visitors facilities, including locker room and changing facilities, as well as the pro shop, which will have views over the course towards the first tee and back over to the 18th green. These will also be supplemented with administration, storage and other facilities that will help with the day-to-day running of the club. In terms of sustainability, we're looking at a highly insulated and building with high levels of air tightness. That's to be driven primarily by the building standards, more particularly the 2020 regulations, which are coming into effect in March this year. The club do have aspirations for a sustainable building, and we're reacting to that with a look toward heat pump technology, likely air source heat pump technology, to have an electrically operated sustainable building. So to conclude, we're looking at high quality modern facilities to support the first class golf course facilities that are to be provided on the site. We're going to look to deliver a modern and sustainable building and provide a great facility for the golf club and the local golfing community. Thanks, Robbie.
No problem. Thank you very much, David. That was great. We have a further poll just to gauge reaction to the clubhouse proposals, and I'd appreciate it if you could, just give us your thoughts on whether or not you support the proposals for the new clubhouse. I'll just leave this to run for 10 or 15 seconds or so till we get the responses back. That's great. So we've got some good responses there, with the majority of people again in support of the proposals for the new clubhouse. Thank you. So, given that we've now discussed the golf course element, I will hand over to Graeme Oswald of Taylor Wimpey to discuss their approach to the development of the housing component of the development. Graeme.
Hi everyone, thanks very much Roddy. Thank you to all of you for attending the event today. Great to see so much interest in this development and the forthcoming planning application. My name is Graeme Oswald. I'm the Design and Planning Manager for Taylor Wimpey West Scotland, and from a Taylor Wimpey perspective, hoping to lead what will be a successful planning application process. Today I'm just going to touch on a bit about Taylor Wimpey, then I'm going to go into the specifics of the site that we see before us here in the presentation. So yeah, Taylor Wimpey, for people who are not aware, established in 2007 as a result of an amalgamation of George Wimpey and Taylor Woodrow. Taylor Wimpey operates across the full of the UK and also with an operation in Spain. We have 23 regional offices throughout the UK, which certainly gives us the ability to work at a local level, but with all the governance that you would expect from a national home builder. So you may be aware that a big part of Taylor Wimpey's work as a company is to invest heavily in the areas that we work in. And this site is clearly no different, you know, and there is an element of anxiety sometimes in local areas, you know, when it looks like new development might be coming forward. Sometimes it can raise a bit of some contentious issues. What I want to reassure you today is that, like Roddy had touched on earlier, that your opinions really do count. We will be taking those opinions with us as a report to Argyll and Bute Council and be presenting it to the council. And the council will clearly engage with all their stakeholders to hopefully get to the end of a planning application process where we have a well thought through and well detailed development design that meets as many of people's requirements and needs as possible. So we look to engage early, help the communities in which we operate, build our reputation by ultimately being a responsible neighbour during development. So that's pre-development, which is the stage we're at now, and during construction, and even when we're approaching the very end of construction life and the immediate period after that, we want to continue to be a responsible neighbour during that whole project cycle. We look to always ensure that we're creating developments that integrate well with existing communities and therefore giving something back to the areas that we operate in. So onto the site itself, Helensburgh Golf Club, fantastic opportunity, unique and exciting in every sense. Delighted and proud to be part of it, and yeah, it's quite unique in the sense it's a multi-stakeholder development with golf club modernisation and the inclusion of private and also affordable element of housing. So it's much needed housing within the area. Gross acreage is 186 acres. Residential acreage, which is the site that you can see outlined in red in front of us, is 30.8 acres, and it's allocated within the residential, allocated as residential site within the LDP, the local development plan. So the first thing to consider is the constraints on the development, and clearly levels is a massive challenge for us. There's 22 metres levels difference from the north boundary on the residential site to the south. There's also a 5.5 metre platform difference in level between the actual platform and Kent Drive to the south. So it's, you can see from the cross sections in front of you there, it's a development that really does need to be carefully thought through and dealt with through platforming exercise, a tiering exercise, but also with the opportunity to mitigate against any visual impact that the development brings on the hillside, and the way that that can be done is clearly through some dense tree planting there, and that's what our proposal is based on, to ensure that we create new habitat, but also reduce the visual impact of the development on the hillside. There'll also be an opportunity for us to hopefully get some good strong connections north-south, not least the Old Luss Road, which dissects the site north to south. We do have a lot of trees that are on the residential part and also on the golf club site. It's rich in trees, and there will be a full tree survey which will be submitted as part of the planning application. And we need to obviously consider what we need to do in terms of compensatory tree planting to obviously replace any amenity that's lost through trees, but also to ensure that we're creating new habitat for wildlife. There's an existing water main which runs up the centre of the site under Old Luss Road and off to the west. We have clearly surface water to contend with, both during the construction phase and also the detailed drainage design, which will need to accompany the detailed planning application. And the whole point to this is to absolutely ensure that the houses to the south and also to the west, particularly to the south, are protected against the potential for any surface water runoff, both during construction and post-construction. So we'll be appointing consultants to specifically examine all that and put some detail together on how to deal with that. There'll be a transport assessment which will deal with the local infrastructure and how that is going to be able to cope with clearly we're going to have an increase in some traffic as a result of the development, and we will be submitting that transport assessment as part of the planning application, and it will be down to the council to have a look at that and ensure that this doesn't put an unnecessarily large burden on the existing network. Peat is a consideration as well, which we've already, or Jonathan went into some detail on in his presentation. It obviously presents great opportunities, and really the first thing to note is any loss of recreational ground to make way for housing is more than compensated by the additional land which is part of the revised golf club golf course design. The linear nature of the design will reduce the visual impact, which will obviously, as we touched on, via new tree planting. We're going to have improved access into the site. There's going to be access from East Abercrombie Street. There's also going to be access from Kent Drive, and that is going to essentially improve the access up into the site, probably giving more people an ability to actually be on this part of the hillside to enjoy the views east and west along the Clyde Estuary. At the moment, it's residents are fairly limited in that they can walk up the existing right of way, but the rest of the land is a private. Essentially, it's a private golf course. So, improving access into this piece of land is a great plus point. Integrating with existing community via green networks and footpath links and view corridors to allow people to get that sense of navigation as they're walking around the development. That's all part of what we'll be aiming to provide. Really one of the main points for Taylor Wimpey in recent years is to actually be quite critical of our layout design, and we have internal processes to do that before we even consider the submission of a planning application. So creating a sense of place, belonging, safe and pleasant streets, and adopting best practice essentially for streets and homes for all Accommodation wise, we certainly look at this as an opportunity to create a development that does cater for all, with everything from a 2-bedroom terraced house up to a 5-bedroom detached home, along with an affordable element. We are proposing in excess of 2 acres of passive amenity open space, part of which will include 2 sustainable urban drainage systems, complemented with high quality landscaping, recreation areas, and an equipped play area using sustainable materials for the residents and for the community to enjoy. We'll basically use a plant where we can approach in the design to ensure that we soften and create that sense of place and increase natural habitat where we can. We're also proposing in the region of 1 acre of landscape buffers, which is going to be particularly of high value for habitat creation. And that will be included within some footpath links as we start to carve up how we get pedestrians moving around the development. So from a sustainability perspective, we always strive to end up in a net gain position in terms of biodiversity. So anything that's lost through development is more than compensated in terms of the new planting, and therefore it's a biodiversity net gain is what we will be looking to achieve on this development. So we look to create rich variety of biodiversity, including wetland planting, habitat creation, planting spec which increases bee population, native planting as much as possible, and tree specification which can potentially maximise carbon storage to help tackle climate change. Locally and sustainably sourced materials, play equipment from sustainable sources, and from a pure development perspective, we feel that the development, in addition to building to new regulations, which is clearly going to have an improved building fabric and increased renewable technology, we also feel the development overall is very sustainable in its nature because of what it delivers. It delivers a modernised golf club and golf course fit for a wider scope of population, private housing for a wide range of buyers, and affordable housing in line with council policy. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll look forward to continuing the journey with the community as we move through the planning process. There'll be details shared at the end of this presentation, which will give everyone a reminder as to where to go to get additional information, Taylor Wimpey website and Montague Evans website. And finally, I just want to thank you all again for attending and for listening to what we have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Graeme. That was very thorough. Ewan, I wonder if you might elaborate on the Dunbritton Housing Association involvement in these proposals, if possible, please.
Thanks, Roddy. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ewan MacDonald, and I work for Gregor Cameron Contracts Limited. Our company are development agents for Dunbritton Housing Association, which means the main job we do for Dunbritton is to act as project manager on their new build housing developments. We've been working with Dunbritton for a number of years and have project managed construction of several housing developments for them in Argyll and West Dunbartonshire. Dunbritton themselves are a registered social landlord, which means they're a non-profit making organisation providing affordable housing for people in need of a home. They're based in Dumbarton and they own housing in West Dunbartonshire and Argyll, and at the moment they have over 350 affordable homes in the Helensburgh and Lomond area. Part of the new development we're here to talk about today will be a number of houses for affordable rent, and Dunbritton are delighted to be working with Helensburgh Golf Club and Taylor Wimpey to deliver these houses. When this housing is completed, it will go part of the way to meeting the significant demand for affordable housing in the area. Design of the houses is at an early stage just now, and the next step is to decide what type and size of affordable housing should be built. This will be done in consultation with Argyll and Bute Council's Housing Services Department to make sure that the house mix Dunbritton builds here works for the housing needs and demand in the area. Another important part of the design will be how the affordable housing and the private housing are integrated. And the aim here will to have a development that's coordinated in terms of design and finish, but it also takes into account the practical aspects of management and maintenance of affordable houses by Dunbritton. Once the design has been decided in more detail, Dunbritton will be working with the Scottish Government and Argyll and Bute Council to secure the funding to develop the affordable housing, along with any infrastructure needed to service the new houses. Dunbritton are looking forward to delivering high quality, energy efficient, affordable homes for the future tenants of this development. We're at an early stage of that process, and feedback from the local community is important. We'd like to hear any comments you have, and we'll be providing contact information for you to let us know your thoughts. Thanks for listening, and if you have any questions you'd like to submit just now, we'll be reviewing those at the end, and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ewan, and also Graeme. We have our final question, our final poll, and I wonder if you might take the opportunity to answer this. So it's just to garner some views on whether or not you support the proposed housing development of these proposals. We'll just give that a minute or so to run, or a few seconds to run. I think that's pretty good for us just now. We've got some good responses there. So overall, 52% of people responding in support of it, 27% undecided, and 21% not unsupportive of the housing components. So thank you for that. So just to bring everything to a conclusion, we trust that the information provided has given you a good idea of our proposals. It's important for us to highlight again that these plans are indicative at this stage and that they're not fixed or finalised. I don't think I could emphasise that strongly enough. We therefore welcome your comments, and your views are very important to us. We'll consider the comments provided today and make any necessary changes to our proposals. We then will hold a further event so you can provide final comments on our proposals before we submit our planning application later in the year. Copies of our consultation boards and further information are also available on the websites shown on the screen. And if you have any questions, please enter these into the chat box and we will try to provide a response today. You can also complete feedback form on our websites or email us at hgcdevelopment@montagueevans.co.uk. So at this moment, we'll move on to the questions that have been provided during the presentation. And one of my colleagues is sitting behind the scenes who should be able to help. Gregor, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do, Roddy. Thank you very much. First question is probably one for yourself, Roddy. Will there be a separate consultation and planning application relating to the golf course and clubhouse element of the proposals?
Thanks for that, Gregor. No, so at the moment, what the proposals involve the progression of a single planning application for both the development of the houses and the reconfiguration of the golf course and the clubhouse. So it will be wrapped up in a single planning application. That's really why we're here today, to talk about both of the proposals. And we will come back again, as I said, likely in April, to present the refined details once we've got to that stage, once we've done further work on the golf course design, clubhouse design, and indeed the housing layout. We'll be in a better position to actually present to local residents just exactly what the proposals are going to be, with further opportunity to comment then.
Great, thanks, Roddy. The next question relates to the new clubhouse, and it's just what associated infrastructure will be included with the new clubhouse.
I think I might be best placed to answer that. So as part of the ongoing clubhouse design, we're looking at a number of elements of infrastructure. The first one being access, and I think I had mentioned a little in my part of the presentation there that the intention is to use as much as possible the existing tracks and roadways that are on the site already. We have a couple of areas where there are a little bit of new roadways to be put in to provide access all the way up to the clubhouse. But as I say, it's generally on existing infrastructure. We do have an ancillary building nearby in the form of the existing green shed, which is to be refurbished as part of the works, and will include some storage facilities for golf clubs for members. And parking is to be provided in and around areas in the vicinity of the site, and gaps between trees. Again, a light touches the intention with minimal tree removal or minimal effect on the existing woodland in and around the area. Okay.
Great, thanks for that, David. We've had a few questions through about vehicle access and the traffic impacts of the development on the wider road network. Graeme, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more just about how vehicles will access the new housing estate and how we're going to deal with the impact of the increased traffic in the area.
Yeah, no problem, Gregor. Thanks for that. So yeah, the vast majority of this site will be accessed via a new residential access road, which will be off of East Abercrombie Street. The proposal at the moment, given the topography of the development, and to obviously improve access into the development via pedestrian links, is that we also have a separate access for the small triangle of land which sits just to the south within the red line, served off of Kent Drive. So there will be a small portion of the development which will be accessed from Kent Drive, with proposed footpath connections from there up into development, but no vehicular access up into the development from there. So the majority of it will be via East Abercrombie Street. But as I'd mentioned in the earlier presentation, there will be a traffic assessment which will be submitted as part of the planning application, and we'll be engaging early with Argyll and Bute Council to understand if there are any areas within the existing network and the existing infrastructure that requires to be addressed, and that will all be part of the detailed consideration of any design and any forthcoming planning application.
Graeme, I might just add to that as well, if it's okay, that from the work that we've done already, and we've been fortunate enough to be looking at this site for a period of time, and we've already undertaken a number of traffic surveys which predate the lockdown restrictions. So we've got a fairly good idea about what the normal traffic flows are in this area, if people were going about their business with the coronavirus period. That did identify that the development could be accommodated within the existing junction network without any significant mitigation. Now, clearly, that's a piece of work that we produced, and as Graeme has explained, we will be taking that to Argyll and Bute Council for review and comment, and to provide any responses that they think are appropriate. So yeah, just tying back into that point that Graeme made, that this is part of an ongoing process, and there will be further work done on transport and access with regard to this site. Yeah, absolutely. And if there are further surveys required as part of the process, then clearly we'll be more than happy to conduct those surveys as required. But yeah, thanks for that, Roddy. Yeah.
Thanks both. That's a really helpful overview. We've had a question here about the Old Luss Road, so if we could turn to that now. The Old Luss Road is an important footpath for local walkers and cyclists, but needs improvement to both surface and drainage. Will Old Luss Road be improved as part of these proposals?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and I think it's a very important link. It again highlights just how unique this development is, that it's got such an old historic route through it, and obviously great that it's going to be retained as part of the detailed proposals. What we will do following this event today is we'll be engaging with Argyll and Bute Council on every front. They will be examining all aspects of the design proposals, and it will be part of the planning application process for the council to consider that particular aspect of Old Lush Road and whether there is a need for anything additional to be done in respect of the section which is within the red line. So yes, that's one that clearly will form part of the pre-application consultation report. And thanks very much for raising the question.
Great, thank you, Graeme. And sticking with sort of infrastructure for walkers and cyclists, will the proposed development have any active travel links to the A818?
So there's going to be access to the A818 from the development via East Abercrombie Street. That is absolutely guaranteed. That is the only natural access into the development, and you know, the actual site design itself will be very much in the theme of designing streets whereby pedestrians and cyclists in the greatest part will have priority over vehicles. So therefore encouraging active travel, encouraging people to use the bike or walk to the closest location that they're looking at. And if that's to a bus route on the A818, then yes, they can do that via East Abercrombie Street by leaving the main access point within the development.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. We've had a few questions through from residents of Mercury Drive. If we can maybe turn to those now. I wonder if you could give us a bit more information about how the proposed development will affect the existing properties on Mercury Drive, particularly in terms of flooding and any upgrades in that area.
Yeah, so we'll conduct a flood risk assessment as part of the detailed design and consideration for the planning application. Basically, there's not going to be any upgrade required to Mercury Drive. We can confirm that is the case. The design approach, if you like, as it stands just now, has part of the fill drainage system draining to East Abercrombie Street and the other part to Golf Hill Drive. So Mercury Drive is unaffected by any of the potential drainage connections which would take place. And the surface water will discharge to the existing water courses to the south, the water courses which are within the red line application boundary. So the surface water will discharge to those water courses via the SUDs. Yes, just to reiterate again, you know, the surface water runoff during construction and post-construction is clearly a priority on a development of this nature.
That's great, thank you. And sticking with questions relating to Mercury Drive, how will you ensure that the residents of Mercury Drive are not overlooked by the new homes and are not affected by light pollution from the new development? So what we have here is obviously a very steep site. The only way to develop a site of this nature and to protect the southern boundary, which Mercury Drive houses back onto, is to have a certain amount of standoff. That is purely from the sort of practical sense of developing a site with such steep levels. It requires that level of standoff. It also merits it because it provides that fairly strong, consistent landscape buffer, which will form part of that southern boundary. So therefore, the tree species that go in there will be of a nature that will provide privacy for both properties, old and new, existing and proposed. But also there'll be of the correct species that can be managed via the estates management company. So whilst you know, it will protect privacy, it will also be something that will be able to be maintained and therefore a sustainable design solution to protect privacy and also not be an issue for grabbing daylight from people's gardens. So all in all, this is all
going to be resolved via the landscape proposals and the detailed design.
Great, thank you. We've had a few questions through about the affordable housing element, so I think we can turn to that now. I just wonder, Ewan, if you could say a little bit more about where on the site the affordable housing will be located and the approach to the design of them. And there's been a couple of questions through about the wedge that's shown in orange on the plan as well, if you could maybe speak to that.
Yeah, of course. So the proposals are at a very early stage at the moment, although we expect that part of the affordable housing allocation will be delivered in the area coloured orange on that plan. However, that area in itself is unlikely to satisfy the overall affordable housing obligation for the site. So additional areas will have to be considered with Taylor Wimpey to completely fulfil the 25% affordable requirement.
Yeah, thanks, Ewan. If I could just add as well that obviously that 25% requirement is set out in the Argyll and Bute local development plan, and it is a position which we will achieve on this site. There have been there's no formal view at this moment in time about where the affordable housing will go, and those discussions will continue, will be ongoing. But certainly, and we'll be able to have a more formalised position on that, I think, when we come back to present to residents again at our final view. I think, Ewan, it's fair to say that we'll know just exactly what type of housing you're going to be providing for and where it will be within the site.
That's great. Thank you both. That's very helpful. Moving on to the next question then. Will there be a bat survey and bird surveys undertaken prior to any work commencing?
Yeah, again, I can answer that one, Gregor. So the answer is absolutely yes. We are well aware that there are a variety of ecological issues that affect this site. Through discussions that we've already had with Argyll and Bute Council planning officers, we're aware that there's likely to be a requirement for an environmental impact assessment specifically related to the expansion of the golf course northwards. But we're also aware that there is existing tree cover, which does in itself create or allow the opportunity for wildlife, so birds and protected species. So yes, we will absolutely be undertaking ecological surveys when the seasons allow, and we will be submitting that information as part of our planning application to Argyll and Bute Council for consideration.
Great, thanks, Roddy. Graeme, this is probably one for you. Will the new homes have electric vehicle charging points?
Thanks, Gregor. Yeah, well, it's certainly something which we are almost 100% certain is going to feature as part of the revised Scottish building regulations. These revised regulations have not been released yet. The white paper hasn't been released yet, but with climate change so high on the agenda, we would fully expect that the new regulations will include for EV charging in each house. And this development, in terms of its timeline, will certainly be to the new regulations. So very high likelihood that EV charging will be incorporated within housing plots and possibly within some visitor parking bays.
Gregor, just before you go on to the next question, I would just like to take the opportunity to remind attendees of this event, and I know there's been a few people who joined perhaps later on. We've run through the presentation, different people have spoken to the proposals, and we are now taking questions. Now, those questions are provided through the chat function on Zoom, so if you do have any questions to ask, please type them in, and my colleague Gregor will be able to read them out, and the relevant expert that we have on the call can provide an answer.
Yep, thanks, Roy. We've had a request here for a map showing the existing course and driving range compared to what is proposed, and I think we can make that information available on our website after the event. Moving on to the next question, this is one for Graeme again. what are the Scottish characteristics of Taylor Wimpey's Scottish house type range?
So our house type range has had a fairly recent overhaul in so much as, excuse me, we were for many years we were using traditional facing brick and render materials for our house types, and this is something that we visited probably about 18 months ago or 2 years now, and sampled changing to more in the way of stonework, reconstituted stonework with higher proportion of render, high quality precast sills, slate effect flat, concrete low profile tiles. So very much so, this is something that we identified as being some, a big part of what we do is ensuring that, especially on a site like Helensburgh, that we use high quality materials, and that is what we're proposing is a combination of reconstituted stone with render, precast sills, and flat slate effect concrete tiles, which is what we're looking to use, and very Scottish in its characteristics. So that's certainly what we are proposing to use on this development.
That's great, thank you. And sticking with questions relating to the housing, there's been a question here: what will the site size be for each house type? So I don't know if you want to say a bit more about the plot sizes and gardens and that sort of thing.
Say that again, sorry, Gregor, I missed the start of the question.
Sorry, the question was, what will the site size be for each house type?
Okay, so the plot sizes will be in conjunction with the Argyll and Bute requirements residential guide for new residential development, and we'll ensure that plots are proportionate and they meet the needs of the residential guide. Essentially, that is what we will be governed by. We will have the local authority requirements on garden sizes, and that is what we will need to ultimately comply with. So yes is the answer. The gardens will be appropriately sized in conjunction with Argyll and Bute policy for residential development.
Great, thank you. And a couple more we can probably roll into one. Will the housing be on a bus route, and how far away will the nearest shop be to the new development?
Okay, so the nearest bus route will be probably something in the region of 10 minutes or so walk to the A818. There's also going to be access to the shops to the south, Churchill Square, via Kent Drive pedestrian access, and again something in the region of 10-minute walk, easy walk to those shops, and those will probably be the closest shops to the development. But again, the importance of the Kent Drive pedestrian access really jumps out there when we can see that it will give 300 potentially around the 300 new houses, close access to the existing shops within that area for everyday needs.
That's great, thank you, Graeme. We'll turn now to a question about the golf club, to give you a bit of a pause. So we'll turn to you, John. Do Hillsborough Golf Club have any plans to change the way you can access their course? For example, being able to pay as you go without being a member? Sorry, John, are you still on the call?
Yeah. No, the club currently is very welcoming of visitors, and that will continue. We are a community sports club, and we welcome visitors and players as well as members.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, John. Sorry, Roddy, we'll come back around to you now. We've had a question here about whether the local council has been informed. I wonder if you want to speak a little bit to the wider consultation process which we're undertaking at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, Gregor, not a problem. So this consultation event is part of a wider pre-application consultation process that we're going through. That was started back in the first week of January when we submitted a pre-application or proposal application notice, sorry, to Argyll and Bute Council. That's a formal requirement for major planning applications, whereby we, when we submit that to the council, we then have to undertake certain certain obligations and consultation requirements within the next 12-week process. And that is, that work has to be undertaken before we can submit a planning application. Now, we are undertaking this event. We'll have a further event next month, pushing into April, and it's likely then we'll submit the planning application thereafter towards the early part of the summer. We will also be, we are also speaking in detail to the council planners. We have had a number of pre-application discussions with them on this site over the course. We've also met with a number of different key stakeholders and statutory consultees, so Nature Scot, SEPA, and again, Council Roads Department. So these people or these departments are key that we continue to negotiate and discuss with them, to refine our proposals so that when we submit our application, it stands the best prospect of success.
That's great, thank you, Roddy. And then we've also had a question here about the likely development programme, and sort of linked to that, when the current projected date for sales to commence would be. I wonder if you could just talk through the development programme.
Graeme, do you want to take that one? It's probably an easy one for you.
Yeah, it's one that's it's quite a sort of quite a difficult one to be absolutely certain on, clearly at this early stage. But our hope would be that certainly the sequence of events. First of all, let's just go in that order. Should this application be successful, then what would happen first is the commencement of the construction of the new clubhouse. Whilst the clubhouse is under construction, we will be preparing for a site start on the initial works. We won't be able to start those initial works until the clubhouse is complete and operational. We will then, first of all, demolish the existing clubhouse and move in to platform the site. So there's a significant lead-in period before the new housing can be delivered. So we will be looking at 2020, if the application is successful, we will be looking at moving into to start the works in 2023, but potentially housing not becoming available until nearer 2024. And that's just unfortunately the nature of the development, the lead-in works which are required as part of that. But what I can say is, if anyone has an interest in a property, we do have an ever-growing list of interested people who are looking to get themselves on that list with an interest in a new home with us. So to our Wimpey website is the place I would direct you for that, and we'll certainly keep you informed of any proposed sales launch date. The only caveat to that is, from an affordable housing perspective, there may well be the option to deliver the small portion of affordable housing which is proposed in the access off of Kent Drive. That potentially could come forward earlier than the rest of the residential development within the main body of the site. But we're as keen as anyone to move quickly on this, as I'm sure the golf club are. if we get a successful outcome in the detailed planning application.
Great, thanks for that. We've had a couple of questions through about light pollution with a particular reference to impact on residents on Mercury Drive again. So I wonder if you could just say a bit about what steps have been taken to reduce or minimise light pollution from the new development.
So similar to the question that was asked earlier, I guess, the main thing that's of great benefit here to the houses within Mercury Drive is we're going to have a sustainable managed screen, which is going to ensure that privacy is respected and maintained. Light pollution is as minimal as possible, if not nil, by the time the tree belt is fully mature, and those trees will be managed. They'll be managed, on a routine maintenance basis with the estate management company. So therefore, a sustainable solution which really gives the residents of Mercury Drive the best of both worlds. Not stealing light from their back gardens, also stopping and screening any artificial light, and clearly being managed to a level which is sustainable and allows the habitat within that tree belt to grow and enhance over years. So the Mercury Drive properties, I don't think I've got anything to feel concerned about in terms of light pollution, but it will all form part of the detailed consideration for the planning application and will be looked upon carefully by environmental pollution control or environmental health at Argyll and Bute Council.
Great, thanks for that. The next question we've had through is about the impact of the new development on local schools and medical facilities. I don't know if you want to say a bit about how that's been taken into consideration as part of the wider approach.
So the most recent data that we had on the existing education facilities tells us that there is capacity within the existing education facilities to accommodate the increased population that this development would bring, and that is the position on that point. It's fairly clear that is where that sits at the moment, and as with every other aspect or every other strand of this planning application, that part of it will be further assessed again as part of the planning application process with Argyll and Bute Council. But at the moment, there is no need for anything further to happen to the existing education facilities because of the fact there is capacity there to accommodate the increased population that the development would bring.
Great, thank you. Sorry, and staying with you, Graeme, we've had a sort of, just building on one of your previous points, you referred to the separation of vehicles and cyclists throughout the development. So the question is really, will there be a dedicated cycle route which is truly segregated from cars within the development?
The detailed design, I guess, is the thing that's really going to determine where the cycle routes are and whether or not there's going to be a dedicated route which runs east to west. We know that there's going to be the existing public right of way which will be protected. So Old Lush Road is essentially for pedestrians and cyclists, but only once we get into detailed discussions with Argyll and Bute Council will we understand whether there is a dedicated cycle route which runs east to west. And we'll probably have more to report on a number of these questions at the next event. So yeah, it's another takeaway question, that one. But thank you for raising it.
That's fine. Thank you, Graeme. Sorry, just returning to the previous question, we've just had a couple more questions in about the impact on local health facilities. I know you touched on the education side of it. I don't know if you want to say any more about the impact on medical facilities in the local area.
At the moment, we're unaware of any overly burdened medical facilities. Not to say that that doesn't exist, but certainly at the moment we haven't, we haven't necessarily flushed out and got to the end of that yet as to what, if anything, requires to be done in that respect. But these are all takeaway questions, and certainly things that we'll be able to respond to at the next event, which will, by which point we should have more certainty on these aspects. But again, thank you for raising it.
Yeah, just to add to that, Graeme, again, and I think anyone listening should rest assured that when we submit the planning application, all these issues will be considered carefully by the local authority, and indeed residents will be able to make these comments directly to the council if they have specific concerns on any of these matters. Now, if it appears that there are specific shortcomings in any of these areas, then the standard approach is to ask the developer to seek to mitigate it in some way, shape, or form. So we will, have a further look at that, given that it's been raised, form a view as to what we think is required, and progress on that basis, and ultimately will be for the local authority to take a view as to how any capacity issues or constraints that might emerge are dealt with more centrally.
Thanks, Rory.
Yep, thank you both. If it's okay, could we turn to Ewan now? We've had a question here. Can you explain what an affordable house is in Helensburgh?
Yes. So in this instance, it would be what we call social rent. So affordable housing can include shared equity housing or housing for sale at a reduced value. But in this instance, it would all be affordable housing for rent under Scottish secured tenancies. And the rents would be in line with Scottish Government benchmarks. So there's a set of rents published by the government every year that the whole country is governed by in terms of social rent. So standardised affordable rents. And that's all we would be providing in this instance.
That's great. Thanks for that. Turning back to Old Luss Road, I've had a few more questions on that. Will the Old Luss Road be surfaced and landscaped through the housing estate and surfaced as it goes through the golf course as well?
So we've yet to determine what the council's expectations, requirements are in respect of Old Luss Road. We understand it's a really important route, and these are things that we can only establish once we get into the detailed design, for the landscaping, which is clearly going to complement Old Luss Road and also the surfacing. It's a question for the council, and we may have, a bit like all of these questions, we may have some responses to give at the next event. It might actually be the case that we don't have until the application is actually submitted, because that is when you're guaranteed to get certainty on addressing any issues such as Old Luss Road and how it's going to be addressed and how it's going to be dealt with. So we'll certainly ask the question, or the council will no doubt address it as part of their discussions with us, and hopefully more to report in due course.
Again, if I could just add a little to that as well, Graeme. Yeah. The Old Luss Road has a very special character, and I think to significantly upgrade that in any way would be detrimental. So I think the idea that it always remains a path of some form is probably a good one. And if there are to be upgrades, I would imagine it would be in that direction, and it would not be a substantial upgrading. So I don't think it would necessarily be to tarmac the road as is suggested, or to change the nature of it in any great form.
I would agree. Thanks for that, Roddy. I think it is far more valuable to respecting the character of the local area, the history of Lush Road, to just ensure that it's usable for as many people as possible, and you know, that doesn't necessarily mean wholesale upgrade. It just means, you know, ensuring that it is usable for a decent scope of the population. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We've had a request here for a copy of the development layout to scale, just so this person can get a better idea of the development layout. I wonder whether you just want to speak to the master planning process, which is currently underway, and when that information will be available.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just respond first of all. So the presentation that we provided today is available on our websites. So if I go back to the screen here, you can see there are, sorry, just bear with us, there are two websites. So the company I work for, Montague Evans, has got a website with www.montague-evans.co.uk/HGC development, or taylorwimpey.co.uk/Helensburgh-golf-club. Now, all of the information that's been presented today is up there, and indeed more detail on some of these points can be seen there as well. The actual plans and scale drawings of the plans won't be available until we submit the planning application. But again, if someone had a specific requirement to look at a detailed element of the proposal, perhaps if they could get in touch separately using your email address, HGC development at montague-evans.co.uk, we can provide them information they require.
That's great, thanks, Roddy. We've had a number of questions, again, still on the topic of traffic and impact on various junctions and roads in the local area. I know we've touched on the transport assessment already. Is there anything else to add there? Obviously, that'll be something that we can pick up. We can take away those comments and look at them in detail ahead of the next event. Is there anything else we need to say to that?
I don't think so. I don't think that there's anything else we can add at the moment, Gregor. It's obviously been covered off on a couple of occasions today. There's an existing transport assessment which will be submitted as part of the planning application, and it will be the job of Argyll and Bute Council, Roads Department, Transportation Department to have a look at that, examine, you know, the content of it, understand if there's further surveys required to get a measure on you know, how the existing infrastructure can cope with the development that's proposed. So we unfortunately don't have anything else to report on that, but it will certainly form part of the detailed planning application considerations.
I would add as well that if people have specific concerns about anything they're aware of that perhaps isn't captured in, you know, in our assessment work, then let us know it. You know, we will review that. We will, you know, take the findings and comments from this consultation event and provide them to our transportation consultant to ensure that the points raised are taken into consideration, and that are, you know, if they're valid, they're addressed as part of the planning application. So yeah, again, if people, you know, I don't know the form of the question that you've got there, Gregor, if it's very specific in terms of the issues that are raised, but again, if someone has very specific issues that they want us to take account of, then, you know, visit the websites, fill out a feedback form, or drop us an email on the website or in the email address that I mentioned previously.
Thanks, guys. Moving on to the next comment, we've had a comment welcoming that the new clubhouse will use a heat pump for the heating. So question relating to the housing, what form of heating will the houses have? Will they also use heat pumps, or will they be a more traditional form of heating?
It's not entirely decided yet, unfortunately, partly due to the fact that we still haven't seen the white paper for the revised building regulations. Once we get that and we understand exactly what the expected reduced carbon is on new housing, we will make a decision then as a group, as TW UK group, as to what our approach is going to be to deal with that. So it'll be a combination of upgraded external wall fabric to improve U values, thermal conductivity through the external wall, and it will be a decision then as to what form of renewable technology we utilise, whether it's a combination of PV and heat pump, or whether there's another solution out there. So more to report on that in the future, but unfortunately we just don't know yet exactly what's going to be expected of us with the new regulations. So to be confirmed.
Thanks. And in a similar vein, will the housing design and positioning on site be designed to maximise solar gain and views over the Clyde estuary to improve resident amenity?
That's a very good question, and it's one that we feel passionately about. It's one of the things that really struck us when we first looked at this development a good few years ago now, was the opportunities for exactly that: great views and south-facing gardens. And even the gardens, the north-facing, or the front gardens, should I say, that are going to be south-facing, these are also houses and plots that have got great opportunity. So both from a solar gain point of view, from an energy point of view, but also from a sort of amenity and just sheer, enjoyable and pleasant environment for people to live. The site certainly lends itself to having the design or the sort of high level feasibility design that we have looked at the moment, because that really tiers the site east to west, giving plenty of plots on either side of the road opportunity to enjoy the views, and there'll be great view corridors from certain parts of the street when walking through the development, and also within the public open space. So all in all, quite an exciting part of what's going to come forward if we have a successful planning application process.
That's great. Thank you, Graeme. We have a question here about the construction phase for the golf course, if Jonathan Tucker's still with us. The question is, for the development of the new holes on Black Hill Mire, what will the access arrangements be for heavy vehicles for construction?
Thank you, Gregor. We would obviously look to develop a detailed construction environmental management plan, which would seek to avoid any impact on the mire. We would develop dedicated haul roads, temporary haul roads, which would look to avoid any intrusion into the peat substrate. If there's any requirement for any semi-permanent surfacing, then we put that in place. But I think the key issue here is to avoid any impact on obviously on the mire and any associated habitats and groundwater dependent ecosystems in the area. So yes, a detailed plan would be developed, dependent obviously in liaison with Nature Scott and any other principal consultees, but rest assured that we would ensure that during construction we've looked to minimise any potential impacts.
That's great. Thank you, Jonathan. And staying with the construction phase of the development, will the Old Luss Road path be kept open throughout all building phases?
Thanks for that question. It's a good question, Gregor. I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. I think the council will seek to have that as part of the condition of development, that the pedestrian right of way, long established well-used pedestrian right of way is kept open. You know, we've again yet to establish that position formally from the council, but you know, in our experience with these types of scenarios, where you've got a long and established and well-used right of way, that, you know, the council would expect the developer to do everything within its means to enable that right of way to be respected during the construction phase, possibly with some minor detouring to clearly allow for you know, phasing to take place and substantial you know, significant works to take place. But yes, that would be our feeling on that one at the moment.
That's great, thank you. In terms of the planning application, there's been a question: can 3D drawings be provided of the house types and site layouts, and will a fly-through of the development be provided?
Well, if we're able to provide the site layout and house types, we can certainly, people can get access to these sort of things on our website, and I'd welcome people to access to our Wimpey website, and you'll see in your area tab, which allows you to home in on the Hillsborough area, and it perhaps doesn't give you the house type information at this stage because we're still very early on in the process. But in due course, if people want to put their name on that list and kept informed of developments, then they will be notified when the website is updated, and if there's further information as to what types of house styles are proposed on the site, then those will be available for people to get electronic copies of. So yes, absolutely. In good time, there will be the opportunity for people to get a look at the product that we're proposing to put on this development. With regards to fly-throughs are something that we have used in the past, and we may use, we don't know for certain, but we may use on this particular development. And the one thing that I would just mention on that is they don't tend to be developed and built and constructed until we're much further on in the process, heading towards sales launch in the most part. But if Argyll and Bute Council looked for some images that give us a 3D perspective of what we're proposing, well, that might be the closest thing we get at this early stage to having a 3D look at the design proposals.
Can I just add as well that as part of the planning application submission, we will be undertaking a landscape and visual impact assessment for this development, and with specific regard to long views of the site and specifically of the housing development. As part of that, and I do appreciate that it will be aggregated up and it won't be a model of the specific streets or specific house types, but there will be a model created as part of that study work to show how the development sits in the wider context. And my experiences tends to be 3D kind of wireframe type models as well. So there will be some level of information produced that allows an assessment to be made of how this development sits in context as part of the planning application process.
Thanks, Roddy.
Thanks, guys. Another question we've had through here. Have you considered funding a new traffic-free route to the academy? I think in relation to education.
Similar to the previous question on education and any, I mean, we haven't entered into any detailed discussions with the council in respect of any, you know, further upgrades or contributions or anything of that nature, to be honest. So we're not entirely sure what, if anything, is needed within the local area for on that type of thing. So we'll find out more once we engage with the local authority. So unfortunately, not one that we can answer today, but you know, again, it's a takeaway question for us to look at and respond to.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that point as well, Graeme. It's something that it has been raised separately as part of our consultation exercise. Someone has dropped us an email to ask a similar question, and it really relates to safer routes to school, and you know, what is the, you know, how are people going to get from this development to the school? We don't necessarily have an immediate answer for that just now, and we will give that some further thought in refining our proposals. So yeah, again, to reiterate Graeme's point, that we will come back with more detail on that, I think.
Thanks, guys. This should be a slightly more straightforward one. Will the properties have solar panels installed?
I would imagine they will have either solar or PV panels to accompany some other piece of kit, which will basically harness the any sort of energy that we can create from the outside, and that will be part of the regulation compliance. At the moment, even with the current regulations, we install PV panels on the roofs of our houses. So certainly there's a very high probability that will be repeated, possibly increased, and will be complemented by some other piece of kit to ensure that we meet the requirements of the energy chapter of the building regulations.
Great, thank you, Graeme. Graeme, you've spoken a lot about the surface water and SUDs in the residential development part of the proposed development. We've had a question here about how those will be, how issues to do with flooding and surface drainage will be taken into account with the Clubhouse development. So David, I wonder if you have a response to that.
So in terms of drainage and servicing of the Clubhouse, this is to be integrated as part of the overall master plan, and we do have some discussions ongoing with regards to how we get surface water away from the Clubhouse. Similarly, with some of Graeme's comments there, it forms part of a detailed design package, and we're working our way towards that as we speak.
I think the important point to emphasise there as well, Gregor, is that while there are quite distinct parcels of development associated with the golf course and the housing components, we are master planning this development in the round. So there is a project team that is integrated and that is speaking to each other to talk about all of these issues and to talk about how, you know, surface water flow from the golf course or, you know, into the housing site can be accommodated, can be mitigated, can be controlled, and all of those issues all do sit together. The survey work that we present to the local authority will be robust, and it will tie all these issues together. And it is, you know, as David has just highlighted, is being looked at, and you know, work has been undertaken just now on that very point.
That's great. Thanks, guys.
Gregor, if it's okay with you, I might just remind everybody, I think we've got about 20 minutes or so to go on our presentation. So if anyone has any questions, please type them into the chat function on Zoom, and Gregor, my colleague, can review those and, you know, get the questions that you or get the answers that you want from the project team. If during the course we don't get to your question, or indeed if you don't get the answer that you're looking for, please visit our website, provide or complete a feedback form, or drop us an email to hgcdevelopment@montague-evans.co.uk, and we will to revert with more detail on the specific points you raise.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roddy. A couple more here. This one's quite specific. I'm not sure if this is a golf club or a clubhouse question, but is the track from the end of the council's depot road to the greenskeeper's sheds to be used by any vehicles, either in the construction phase or once the development's completed?
John, I don't know if you want to provide a bit of comment on that, or I think a point that had been confirmed a little earlier by Roddy is that we're considering access proposals to the clubhouse as being either from the south or from the north, but there's yet to be a decision made on that. It's ongoing, and confirmation of that will be forthcoming, and we'll set that aside as further queries to be answered.
Yeah, I mean, just as David has explained, one of these issues is we're not quite bottomed out just exactly how or what the best way to take access to the golf course actually is. There are two potential options. One is to come up from the south to access the site. The alternative is to use the existing road from Lost Road past the depot and use the track to get into the site. But again, that's not something that we've bottomed out at this moment in time, and at the next consultation event we will certainly have more detail on that specific point.
Thanks, guys. We've had another specific question here relating to drainage from the Black Hill Mire and where the water from there will go. So I don't know, Jonathan Tucker, if you want to maybe just speak to the overall drainage approach on the golf course itself. And the
yeah, sure. Well, as Roddy and Graeme have already said, I mean, the scheme will be a holistic one, taking into consideration the golf course and the clubhouse. We would undertake with our hydrology engineers and sustainable drainage experts effectively a review of all the groundwater, surface water, drainage of the area, and ensure that there will be no sort of increase in flood risk. I mean, the beauty of the site is that we have got a large site to work with, so there's plenty of room to fit SUDS features in, sustainable drainage features, to avoid any increase in flood risk. So we would essentially model the whole area, the whole catchment, and build in appropriate hydrology and sustainable drainage features to avoid any increase in flood risk. Does that answer your query?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, John. Just a quick request for clarification as well, that all vehicular access to the housing development will be via East Abercrombie Street, and the Kent Drive access will be pedestrian access only, access for active travel access.
Yeah, so the majority of the site that we can see on the slide there that Roddy's just brought up, everything that's shaded pink, whatever housing features within that area shaded pink, will have a vehicle access via East Abercrombie Street, and that's a certainty really in terms of the design proposals. There will be a vehicular access to the area of land shaded orange, and that will be serving the small number of units, affordable housing units, which are going to be proposed within that area of land. But in addition to that, there will be pedestrian access from there, from the orange triangle northwards into the main body of the site, and that's something that will form part of the detailed design for the development. So majority of vehicle access from East Abercrombie, very small proportion of vehicle access from Kent Drive, and pedestrian access from Kent Drive up into the site.
Perfect, thank you, Graeme. I think that clarifies that really nicely. Staying in that area, will you be leaving the existing trees behind Mercury Drive?
Okay, so it's a good question. The existing trees in Mercury Drive clearly have provided and afforded a great amount of privacy to the gardens to the south for a long number of years. The issue with those particular trees, and again, this will get flushed out as part of the considerations as we move towards liaising in detail with the council. But the main consideration for these trees is the ongoing maintenance of them. They are significant in their height. They have got, well, we have been advised they've got fairly shallow roots, and therefore, in terms of having a sustainable screen that doesn't rob daylight from Mercury Drive gardens and doesn't endanger anyone within Mercury Drive in the event of high winds, then it certainly points towards the removal and replacement of very decent specimen, dense tree planting along that southern boundary. Now, all of this is still to be decided and worked through and discussed with the council, but I felt it was important to raise the health and safety and sustainable aspect of the and the lifespan of these trees which exist on the southern boundary. It's important to recognise that whilst we consider what is the best and most appropriate sort of design solution for ensuring there's privacy within the gardens of Mercury Drive, safeguarding against artificial daylighting going into those gardens, and also making sure that there's no daylight or minimal daylight lost within those gardens. So all part of the design considerations, but important that we talk about the current size and condition and lifespan of those trees.
That's great. That was a really detailed answer, so that's great to know. I'm conscious that we're getting towards the end of our consultation event today. I don't know, Roddy, if I want to pass back over to you now, and you can maybe just sum up everything we've talked about today, and the next steps and forthcoming consultation events.
Yeah, gladly. Gregor, do we have any more questions, or is that us? Do we have all the answers, all the questions that people have asked us?
Yeah, I think that's everything we've covered off in one way or another. And as we say, we've got a few which we'll take away, and okay, we'll bring the answers back to the next event.
Well, on that basis, then, if there are no more questions, I think this is, it's been a worthwhile occasion for us. We hope that everyone that has attended has found it useful. We've obviously ran through the proposals and explained what the respective elements are, turning in the first instance talking about what the golf course and clubhouse proposals are going to be, and then secondly the Taylor Wimpey and the Britain Housing Association components. It's been very useful to have your comments, so thank you again for attending and providing us with those. And we will consider those before holding our second event later this year. We will refine our proposals in advance of that event, and again publicise when we're going to hold it. As I've said, I think we expect that we're going to hold the event sometime in April. What else? In advance of that, we will produce a summary, I guess, of the points and comments that have been raised today. We will upload that to the website, so if anyone has got any questions outstanding, you'll be able to turn to that and to view the information or view the responses that the team can provide. And again, I can only restate that if you have any additional comments, then please do visit the website, email us, complete a feedback form, and give us your comments. We were absolutely here to listen and here to hear what you want to say about the proposals in order to maximise the opportunity which is presented here. So that being said, and if there are no other questions, I think I will draw the consultation event to a close and just say once again, thank you and goodbye.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Roddy.
Thanks,
Thanks, Roddy.